Faith and trust and risk. I don't think they're all the same thing. I just think you present problems if you try to pull them apart from each other. I can't explain it yet. I don't have it figured out yet. Had a interesting conversation with a good friend today about it, and I'm going to be dwelling on it. If I come up with anything that I think is substantially more than what I've already spewed, I'll let you know. The Hebrew writer fleshes out with last time I called them case studies, and I think that's what they are. They're examples of people who express their faith. In verse 7, after he said, it's worth going back to verse 6, and without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. Verse 7, by faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, you got to remember, Noah had never seen rain, or had anyone in the world up to that point. And so when God said, I'm going to send a big flood and it's going to rain, I hated that Bill Cosby's life story, when it came out, is so full of gaps and holes and truly bad things. But I do remember when I was in high school, his LP albums of his stand-up comedy, and one of them was Noah. And I think we maybe minimize the fact that Noah didn't know what rain was. He had never seen it. There was no evidence that that rain was even a thing, let alone that it was going to happen. By faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear, built an ark to save his family. You know, sometimes fear drives faith. I don't particularly like that, but I see it as a valid thing. I mean, I look in my own life, I look at others and realize there are times when, because I didn't have any other option, and I was afraid of the outcomes, all I could do was cry out to God and use what little faith I had to seek his intervention and his help. Well, I don't think fear is an evil thing. And there are some psychologists who think the best thing that anybody can do is eliminate fear. That fear is the enemy. No, I don't think so. And I can go into a big spiel, but I don't think you think that either. But by his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with faith. So Noah condemned the world by his faith? Well, think about it. There was the contrast of his faith in God and the faithlessness of the world around him. You don't have to take much of a stretch to think of Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives being the only people who had any living faith in God as Noah began building the ark. It took him 100 years, more than 100 years, to build the thing with the help of his 3 sons. I don't think anybody around him said anything positive about his activity. To them, I think it was a waste of his life. Wake up and snap out of it there, Noah. What? Good grief. Well, yeah, grief. When that rain began and the floods rose, and only these 8 people and the animals were saved in the ark. Yeah, that was grief. There's an element of righteousness that is in keeping with faith. Righteousness is a matter of doing the right things. I would also add, in the right way, for the right reasons, at the right time. Righteousness is, when you boil everything else away, it's rightness. And for those who have a faith and are expressing it, there will be that element of rightness in their lives. Not in I don't think in a judgmental way. I don't have any right to judge somebody else's motives. And they're not doing it the way I would do it, so they're wrong. Well, that's not the point. The point is, there are things that are right, and there are things that are wrong. And yes, there's this in the middle of shades of gray and shades of white. I can't deny that. It doesn't change the fact that there are things that are right. And my faith, if it's going to express itself, has to be in keeping with that. Verse 8, by faith Abraham, when called to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. The book of Genesis is one of my favorite books in the whole Bible. Part of the reason is because it's all narrative. And I like good stories. They're more than stories. They're accurate accounts of the histories and lives of people. And Abraham, with his wife Sarah, their life comprises an amazing story. Abraham, we don't even know what the content or construct of his faith was, but we know that God spoke to him in Haran and said, I want you to follow me, to come with me, and take this journey to a place that I'm going to give you and your ancestors. Well, a couple of things about that would have stopped me in my tracks had I been Abraham. First of all, I didn't have any progeny. I'd been married to Sarai, but we didn't have any kids, and I'm going to say it tastefully if I can, but it wasn't for the lack of trying. Also, where are we talking about? I mean, give me some kind of a sense of this is the destination. And there was none of that. But Abraham, he said, okay. He didn't know where he was going, but he went. Verse 9, by faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. It's not like we're going to get there and you're going to see there's people for you there. No. He lived as a stranger, as a foreigner. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. So what was the promise? Well, there was a couple of promises. I will give you this land. It turns out it's what we would recognize as the promised land, which is, by the way, considerably larger than Israel today within its borders. The second promise was that Abraham and his seed would multiply and become as numerous and uncountable as the stars in the sky or the grains of sand on the beaches. Well, that's a pretty big promise. And it took a long time for Abraham to get the fulfillment of that promise with one son through Sarah, Isaac, whose name means he laughs. Verse 10, for he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. Now that could be very symbolic. Or, I think it's symbolic, but it could mean our home in heaven. God's the architect. He's the builder. And it could have meant, I think it did mean, that Abraham believed that he would have a place because God had promised him that. He was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. I believe we look forward to that same city. For me, I have to look forward to that. That's my ultimate hope. I don't have lots of hope about tomorrow or the next day sorry, I just don't. But I do have solid hope in heaven. Verse 11, and by faith even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. Now her faith wasn't perfect at all. When God's angel, some people would say this was Jesus, I don't know, but we do know as a heavenly guest, told Abraham, that wasn't his first visit with Abraham, but when he said, I'll be back this time next year and you'll have a son, when Sarah heard that, she laughed. Was it a mocking laugh? I don't know. I mean, to me, I don't get a sense of her going, oh yes, of course this will happen. God has promised. Well, that's just me. Verse 12. And so from this one man, and he as good as dead, I mean, he was 100 years old, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the sand on the seashore. Yeah. Verse 13, all these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. So I guess what I'm saying is, what I'm getting from this is, you will not always see the reward of your faith. I think I'm going to die before I see the realities, the outcomes that I have believed in. It doesn't make me defective. It makes me human. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance. Do you ever feel like in your life, it's just out there and you're not catching up to it? I do. Okay, I'm in good company. And they said, and the writer writes, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. In other words, this isn't our home. We're strangers here. I love the old song, and it's hokey, kind of maybe to sing it. It's very bluegrassy. This world is not my home, I'm just passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. The angels beckon me, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. So maybe I'm not supposed to. Okay, see you next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.